I've already introduced you about some of the best-known paranormal beings of Korean tradition. Maiden Ghost, Dokkaebi, the Nine-Tailed Fox, Changgwi, and so on. If you missed them, there's the link to the playlist in the description and at the corner of the screen. I must say though, most of them are mentioned rarely in contemporary paranormal accounts. Paranormal is often the reflection of the reality. As time and culture change, dying as a virgin is not perceived as such a taboo anymore. Wildlife has gone almost extinct, and who still uses years-old broomstick or mortar mill, from which dokkaebis are said to be born? But one traditional creature seems to be still standing strong the test of time, at least according to the number of stories I come across. Today's subject, Grim Reaper. So, it's already the third episode dedicated to it. I guess it's only natural. After all, death is one inevitable thing in our life, no matter how our lifestyle or belief system change. Nobody exactly believes in the underworld ruled by Yama anymore, and the look of the Grim Reaper also seemed to have diversified from the traditional black cloak and hat to, well, more modern and sleek attire. But so long as death is inevitable, the presence of Grim Reaper is likely to stay with us. I'd also just point out, even though today's main subject is Grim Reaper, some of the stories also feature traditional imageries of the underworld and how sometimes an ancestor or a late family member might come to rescue you from the grip of the Grim Reaper. Both concepts I have also dealt in my previous episodes. Links to the relevant episodes you can find in the description. So, here are 6 allegedly true stories about encounters with Grim Reapers. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. A story my friend told me. She was raised by her grandmother in the countryside until she turned 5 because both of her parents were very busy with their business venture. Only for her education's sake, her parents took her back home in Seoul. Having been practically her mom, Grandma's love for her had never ceased even afterwards. Despite the distance and inconvenient journey, Grandma would never miss to visit her for her birthdays or such occasions with a bundle full of presents and snacks for her. But as her health started failing, she could not make the journey anymore, and citing the distance, my friend didn't visit her very often either. One night she had a dream about her granny passing away. She could not shake off the anxiety and visited Grandma the next day. Her granny was, of course, very happy to see her and insisted that she should cook dinner for her. My friend was out to catch some sweetwater shells for doenjang soup, fermented bean paste soup, in the stream in front of the house, and saw Grandma coming out to the big pots on the courtyard to take some doenjang out. Then, my friend froze up seeing something else. Not far from the pots was a bush of grass, and behind it was a man in black with a pale face, staring at Grandma. He was much tall and sent off clear vibe that wasn't of an ordinary human. Too overwhelmed to do anything, my friend just stood there dripping tears. Only when Grandma called her, she could move again. But despite the enormous sense of foreboding, she could mention neither her dream nor the Grim Reaper-like man she just saw. That night, she insisted to sleep next to Grandma. She listened out for any sound from outside, constantly checking Grandma's breathing and her condition. She thought she shouldn't fall asleep, but for some reason she could not fight off the tremendous drowsiness. When she woke up, it was already bright and the air was full of scent of wet grass. She pulled the duvet up, feeling a bit cold, then sat up with a sense of chills. Next to her was Grandma, in the exact same position she fell asleep the previous night. My friend bursted into tears, holding her cold body. My friend said she was scared of both the dream and the sighting of the Grim Reaper at the time, but by now she is rather grateful that they gave her a chance to see her dear grandma one last time. This is my story from probably 10 years ago, but I still remember it very clearly. It must have been one of the big holidays. Mom had 6 siblings and they gathered all together at my grandma's, except for her 4th sister who didn't get on with the other family members, and 5th sister who had passed away before I was born. Anyway, I played with cousins all day long, stuffed myself with festive foods, and fell asleep. In the dream, I was playing by myself on some street. A woman who resembled Mom but was honestly a bit prettier came up to me. She said she was so happy to see me, gave me candies and patted on my head. Then, out of nowhere, a guy who looked like a Grim Reaper straight out of a TV show appeared and pestered around us, kept asking where my dad was. The pretty lady stepped in between us, telling me not to talk to him. I was anyway focusing on my play and was happier with a kind lady, so I stuck with her. But the guy didn't let up and kept asking where my dad was. "I don't know. He hasn't been home for months," I said in the end. In real life, my dad worked in an artistic field, and his work often took him somewhere away, leaving my mom practically a single mom. The pretty lady started weeping, holding my hands. "Poor you! Poor your mom! What did you do, poor girls? What did you do?" She cried so lamentably that I just started crying myself too. Now, the man tried to keep me separate from the lady. I got scared and didn't let go of her. She appealed to the guy. "They are already practically husbandless and fatherless. Would you really have to take him away? What's this little girl done to deserve to grow up without dad?" I was too young to understand what she meant, but just kept crying with her. The guy said there was nothing he could do, but this lady, unlike a soft look, was a tough cookie. She hung onto the guy's sleeves, and in the end, the guy, looking visibly upset, dragged her away to somewhere. It was an odd dream, but a child doesn't really give too much thought about such a thing. Following day, we all went to a local sauna. It took 2 cars to drive all 13 of us to there. I thought the way to the sauna seemed somewhat familiar, but again brushed it off like a kid that I was. On the way back home, we again squeezed in 2 cars, one for female members, mom, aunts, me, cousins, and the other for guys with uncles, dad, and male cousins. I dozed off in the car, but I suddenly realized something and got up. "I know this way. I saw it in my dream," I excitedly told Mom, but of course she didn't pay much attention and was busy chatting with her sister. Bit vexed with her indifference, I instead called up my dad, who was in the car in front of us. Signal went a few times, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he was just dozing away, but somehow I got anxious. And just the moment I was about to call him the second time, the car in front of us with dad and uncles crushed the wall on the side, even though the street was practically empty that day. We were all shocked and rushed to the crushed car. The car crushed to the passenger seat side. Oldest uncle was the first to be sent off to the emergency. My dad remained unconscious, while another uncle required an emergency operation for his broken leg. Festivity turned to a tragedy, and I cried myself to sleep. And had another dream. I found myself on the same street, and I was looking for Dad. The same pretty lady appeared and told me I shouldn't be there. But where could I go? I asked her if I could just stay with her, but she said if I did, my mom would get sad and cry. "Do you know my mom? Are you a friend?" To my question, she started crying again. "I really long to see you someday. I really wanted to buy you lots of candies and get you a pretty dress too," she said. But before she could finish, the Grim Reaper guy appeared again. He scolded the lady that she shouldn't be doing this, and then told me to fetch my dad. I refused, and the lady ran away with me in her arms. When I woke up, I was on the bench in the hospital. The rest of the family were berating the third uncle who crushed the car, but came out with just some scratch. Apparently he dozed off behind the wheel. His son, my cousin, saw him dozing away and woke him up, but Uncle claimed that he saw a guy in the middle of the road at the moment he got around and had crushed to avoid hitting the guy. But his son, who was the only one who stayed awake in the car, denied having seen any such a guy. Fortunately, my dad woke up next day, but the oldest uncle is left unable to walk, and the other uncle with a broken leg also still limps. Now, I'm recounting this old story because of an old photo I saw a few days ago from my mom's album. I recognized a strange yet familiar face. It was the pretty lady of my dream from years back. I told Mom that I had met her in dreams, and Mom told me it was her fifth sister, who died from a car accident a few days before I was born. She was all excited about her little sister's pregnancy, and I had made all the plans what she'd do for her new niece. I regret that I didn't know that back then. If I had, I would have at least called her Aunt. One summer evening last year, it was the evening before a school trip. I was on my way back from a corner shop nearby to pick up some snacks for the trip. I just noticed stars were bright that night, took a sit on a bench and relaxed, listening to music from my phone and enjoying a bag of crisps. Summer night breeze was cooling and it was all quiet around apart from a few kids out playing. I must have spent about a half an hour that way. I felt a bit drowsy, so was about to head back home when I noticed a tall man walking into my apartment building. He was really tall. I certainly never saw anybody so tall in the neighborhood, so I was just alarmed and watched on. Through the window to the staircase hall, I saw the motion detecting light coming on the ground floor, and indeed I saw the man passing by all right. But the next moment, probably in a matter of 5 seconds, he was all the way up on the 15th floor, activating the lights on each floor one after another. I was so terrified that I could not dare to go into the building until my younger brother found me on his way back home, standing there stuck and lost. I didn't see his face. He was so tall, all I could see through the window was his upper body, clad in black. But I forgot about it all the following day and had a lot of fun on the school trip. When I came back home 2 days later, my brother informed me. "You know what? In the morning you left for trip, they found a lady dead in our building. In a bathtub. Suicide, they say." It all at once brought me back the memory about the tall guy. Could he have been the Grim Reaper himself? A few days after the burial of my grandma, my brother told me that he saw Grandma on the burial day. Apparently, he dozed off on the bus to the burial ground, and in the dream saw Grandma hop onto the bus and walk towards him while no other family member noticing her. And she started scolding him harshly for some reason, but my brother said he was more disturbed by her state than by her anger. Grandma passed away failing to recover from the major operation. She fell and broke her leg. Her fragile bone was shattered to bits, and they had to remove about 2 centimeters of her leg bone completely. Naturally, she could not move at all during her last days and had to live in a loose t-shirt and diapers. And in my brother's dream, she appeared in that sorry state. But he also saw something else. While Grandma raging at him, he saw a man in black at the door of the bus. He didn't get in the bus, but my brother said he could clearly sense he was waiting for Grandma. I assumed that must have been a Grim Reaper. A few days later, I told the brother's dream to the youngest aunt. Hearing what sad attire Grandma was in, Aunt broke in tears. Not long after, this time I had a dream. I was playing with friends in some sort of abandoned building, doing some sort of a hide and seek. I dropped a toy while running away, and when I bent down to pick it up from the ground, in front of me was my grandma. I was surprised because even in the dream I knew she passed away. One big difference though was she was now impeccably dressed in a scarlet top and dark green skirt, and her hair meticulously held together with a hairpin. She smiled warmly and picked up the toy for me. I was more shocked and scared and just snatched the toy back and ran away, which to this day I regret for wasting one last chance to say goodbye to her. But to my defense, it wasn't just her that scared me. I saw a man behind Grandma. He was shrouded in black darkness that I could not see his face clearly, but I could still make out his mouth, which was smiling gently at us. Regardless, its sheer presence scared me enough to make me run away. Could it be the same guy my brother saw in his dream? In the later days, I got to talk about my dream to the same aunt, that Grandma should be in a good place now, having appeared in a beautiful dress. Only then Aunt told me that she was so sad about my brother's dream that she bought a nice dress and burnt it as an offering to Grandma. Apparently it was the same dress she was wearing in my dream. That was the last time I saw Grandma. I miss her and sometimes wish she appeared in another dream, but I won't believe that we at least did the right thing, and she should be in a good place now. It's from 17 years ago when I was a teenager. My family lived on the 16th floor of a 20-story apartment building. On each floor were just 2 apartments facing each other, and in between the staircase and the elevator. One day I was home alone with my older sister. My parents were away for a few days on their holiday. Well past 11 at night, sister suggested we should watch a movie or something and told me to go and pick something interesting from the video rental shop. Yep, those were the days. I had to hurry as the rental shop closed at midnight. So I came out of the front door and was about to reach out for the call button of the elevator. There was something standing next to the button. It was dark. It was dark in the hall too, but the thing itself seemed darker than the darkness, except for its gleaming eyes staring straight at me. I froze stuck there, my one hand still holding the knob of the front door. The dark presence seemed to have been caught just as unexpectedly and stood there still. Was it a robber looking to break in? I don't know what I was thinking, but I got curious to see who that was. I stretched my hand out and waved it to activate the motion detecting light in the staircase hall. When the light was on, there was nothing. Maybe it was my own shadow, but what about those eyes which froze me like a deer in the headlights? I was all goosebumps. But anyway, ran all the way to the video rental shop and ran all the way back and enjoyed the movie with my sister. Following morning, I opened the front door to pick up the newspaper and milk and found a wreath of flower and a pair of straw sandals in front of my neighbor's door. Somebody must have passed away. My parents came back that evening and Mom paid a visit to our neighbor. Had somebody passed away? I asked her when she was back.
Yes, you know the granny. She passed about midnight last night,
Mom said. I think I saw something weird about that time last night, Mom, I said and explained the details.
Oh dear, I think you caught a glimpse of the Grim Reaper waiting for the old lady. Oh, be happy that he didn't take you away with him,
Mom said. Over the years, I often recounted this story on various occasions, and every time I get chills when I remember those gleaming eyes. I'm only 28 years young, but have brushed already twice with the Grim Reapers. The first incident happened during the weeks into the first years in middle school. I'd been a sickly child, and a seasonal cold was almost a routine to me. Nevertheless, it was always a pain to suffer the temperature running between 38 to 39 Celsius and lymph nodes so swollen that I could barely swallow sugar water. Pills and injections could give me only short-term relief. But that particular night, the antipyrectic pill I took seemed to take some effect, and I could fall asleep in a relative comfort. And I had a dream. I was walking around in a town that looked like a couple of 100 years ago, just as in costume dramas. Lots of people were busily roaming around. What made me sure that it was a dream was that on the streets were nuggets of shiny gold, but nobody gave a second look at them. Realizing it was but a dream, I just casually looked around the town. It was bordering against a river that was as wide as Han River, but it seemed only ankle deep. Across the river was a large group of people, all dressed in their Sunday best, and were about to take a group photo. Then the photographer saw me and shouted,
"Oi, mister! There's still one seat empty here. Come and join in the photo."
I was suddenly taken up by the sense of urgency that I had to be in the group photo, and started walking across the river. When I reached maybe about 2/3 point of the river, somebody slapped the back of my head. It was really painful despite it was in a dream. I looked around to find an old man dressed in a white traditional cloak and with a long beard that came down to his chest, just like a gentleman from Joseon Dynasty. He seemed very angry.
"How dare you come over here, you little delinquent! Go back right now! What would your parents say?"
He said and kept beating me. For the sheer fear of getting beaten to death, I ran back towards the river bank. But about halfway there, something gripped my right foot. At the same time, the photographer's voice rang right in my ears.
"Mister, the empty seat is still waiting for you. You must take the photo with us."
Chills ran across my body. I realized it wasn't just any old dream. My foot was dragging back towards the other side of the river. I knew enough I mustn't be taking a photo. I picked up a sharp-looking stone from the riverbed and smashed my own right ankle. Unlike from the old man's slap earlier, it didn't hurt this time. Just with a few blows, the right ankle broke off. Now freed from the grip, I managed to hop back with the left foot. When I woke up from the dream, I was met with Mom's terrified face.
"Are you all right? Do you recognize me?" she asked.
I was confused and asked why all the questions. She said she came to wake me up for dinner, but I didn't respond and my breath got dangerously shallow. I told her about my dream. She thought I barely escaped the underworld. Whether that should be true or not, one thing I can tell is I've had constant issues with my right ankle ever since that dream. The second time had to do with an acute tonsillitis in one winter a few years later. This one was particularly bad, and my temperature didn't fall below 39 Celsius despite all the pills and whatnot. As again, I could barely swallow sugar water. After a week-long suffering, I suddenly felt my head clearing and pains gone early in the morning. I thought I was finally recovering and asked Mom to check my temperature. Reading the result, her eyes got widened and froze a while. She took the second reading, then rushed to wake my dad up, screaming,
"Wake up, honey! Quickly! Our son is dying!"
I didn't understand what was going on. I was wrapped up in a blanket and put in Dad's car. He kept shouting at me as he drove.
"Don't close your eyes! Don't fall asleep! Stay with me, son!"
At the emergency, a nurse took my temperature and showed almost the same reaction as my mom's earlier. Soon, a doctor rushed in and asked me what the date was, if I could say my name and age, and so on. By then I felt a bit nauseous, but answered all his questions slowly. The doctor then said,
"It's the first time to meet a patient still fully conscious with a 41-degree temperature."
Only then I understood why everybody was deathly panicked. I was hooked up to a drip with a strong medication while a nurse checking my temperature every half an hour. Probably the drip was working and I could fall asleep. I woke up feeling somebody intensely staring at me. I opened my eyes to find two guys dressed in black cloak and black hats and with porcelain white pale faces. Behind them was the third guy, an old man in a costume made with hemp fabric. I could instantly tell the men in black were the Reapers. Had my time finally come? But they didn't say anything and just kept flipping through a book. I could barely see the letter meaning life on the cover. That must have been the Doomsday Book that records the birth and death date of people. One of them saw me looking at them. He grinned and said,
"Can you see us? That means your time is up."
That cold grin still makes me shudder. I could not move or turn away and just quietly waited for whatever was to come. The Reaper who was flipping the book lifted his face with a confused look.
"That boy is on the list, but his day has already passed. We'll have to get a new date for him,"
he said. The other Reaper then said,
"Ah, I hear about a boy rescued by his ancestor, so that must be him. We'll have to come back for him then."
And then he looked at me and said,
"Thanks to your ancestor, you've got your life lengthened. Well, see you again then."
They then took the old man and disappeared, passing right through the closed door. Next moment, I heard Mom saying, "You are up! How do you feel?" And with that, I could move again. I told her about the dream I just had and asked if anybody had passed away that night in the A&E. Mom checked around and indeed found out that night was the last night of the funeral of an old man. Fortunately, I recovered completely. About 5 years later, my family once visited a famous shaman to have our fortune told. She took a one look at me and said,
"You had a glimpse of the underworld already. Twice."
She told my parents to wait outside and said to me quietly,
"Thanks to your ancestors, you've got a new life. But already having dipped into the river of the underworld, your third eye had opened. Your life now wouldn't be perfectly normal. Better be prepared for that."
And yes, ever since I had the second dream, I do occasionally see what I'm not supposed to see, though only when I feel extremely weak or extremely strong. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. As I said, there are not a small number of stories about Grim Reapers floating around, so I'm sure there will be more episodes about Grim Reaper in the future. Is there a Grim Reaper figure in your culture too? If there is, are the stories and accounts about it still prevalent today? Do let us know in the comment. As usual, I find it fascinating to learn different cultures from the paranormal perspective. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel for more interesting stories from Korea. If you'd like more direct support, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account too. The link's in the description. As always, I'm grateful for your support in whichever way. I'll come back next Sunday with more stories to tell. Until then, stay safe and take care.